Since the dawn of civilization, the powerful have conspired to twist the course of history to suit their own designs. Like puppeteers, a few shadowy figures could still be pulling the strings of destiny for billions. Those who cry conspiracy are usually mocked at, for sometimes the truth is so obvious it goes unnoticed. Are those merely paranoid fantasies cooked up to feed the appetite of paperback readers and web surfers, but which bear no relation to reality? Or are we living out some perfectly executed plan? Wars, revolutions, social movements, terrorist attacks. Everything is given an official explanation. But perhaps nothing is what it seems to be. Let's dare to unveil the incredible world of secret societies.
United States of America, the most powerful nation of all time. A good friend to have, a terrible enemy to confront. But the world champions of democracy may be hiding a dirty little secret, because they may well be the first ever Masonic country. A nation built on secret alliances, yet still their very own citizens remain unaware. As does the entire world. Among those who instigated the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Latin American Wars of Independence, a startling number were either paid-up Freemasons or sympathetic to Freemasonry. But particularly in the case of the United States, the Masonic influence didn't stop once independence had been achieved. Freemasonry also later participated in the planning and development of this country's political infrastructure, and in the management of it up to modern day. Whether this is a good or bad thing depends on one's opinion about Freemasonry. So first, we should understand what Freemasonry is all about.
Freemasonry is a secret brotherhood whose origins go back to the builders' guilds of the Middle Ages. Maçon in French means bricklayer. It was born out of the need of these craftsmen to aggressively protect their skills, and by doing so, to maintain their status and livelihoods. In addition, their secrecy helped save their brethren from official persecution, since many of the Masonic ideals clashed head-on with those of the Church in Rome. By the end of the Middle Ages, Masonry had evolved into Freemasonry, or Free and Accepted Masons. Free for not admitting slaves or serfs into their ranks, and accepted for now accepting not only builders, but also anyone who swore allegiance to their rules. Freemasonry became an anti-clerical, an anti-monarchical secret society that kept many of the symbols and rituals of the original builders' guilds. Though it became a civilian social organization with avowedly humanistic objectives, on many occasions its operations were secret and unmistakably political.
For centuries, Freemasonry was officially persecuted by the church and the establishment. However, many nobles and clergymen did in fact belong to this secret society. Its ability to attract even those who were supposed to be against it made Freemasonry all that more intriguing and disturbing.
The origins of Freemasonry in the United States go back to 1682, when Scotsman John Skene, an active member of the Scottish Aberdeen Lodge, took residence in the American colony of New England. 3 years later, he was made Deputy Governor of West Jersey. Jonathan Belcher, who was Royal Governor of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, became a Freemason in London in 1704, and boasted of being the first Freemason to be born in the United States.
By 1776, what we now call the United States were barely 13 small colonies crowded upon the East Coast. They had been founded by English Protestant Puritans, the famous Pilgrims. who had been expelled from England by the powerful Anglican Church. The rest of the country was a rich and vast terrain inhabited exclusively by native tribes, an unexplored land that was more often than not conquered at gunpoint.
This was an era where men...
The emerging American Freemasons were strongly influenced by the Rosicrucians, another secret society that was created in Germany in the early 15th century for the study of the hidden arts. The American Freemasons adopted many of the Rosicrucians' mystical ways, as well as their Greek and Egyptian symbols. Symbols that can be seen in many American national emblems today.
The Rosicrucians claimed to have founded their first American lodge in 1694 in Philadelphia, when William Penn, the Quaker who founded the first American community to advocate total religious liberty, Pennsylvania, invited Johann Jacob Zimmermann's Chapter of Perfection to leave Germany and join them. Zimmermann, a Rosicrucian, believed that Christ would return in the year 1700. So in 1694, they built an observatory on American soil to watch for the return of the Lord.
To Zimmermann's regret, Jesus did not show up, and the Rosicrucians subsequently dispersed around Pennsylvania. Some of them became wandering spiritual healers who used amulets and staged ceremonies to ensure good crops and to drive away bad luck.
In 1717, the Great Lodge of England was founded. It claimed authority over all other lodges in the English colonies. But the American lodges rejected the right of the Great Lodge to exert control over them, and they did not recognize its authority. The Great Lodge of England countered this by encouraging the creation of several other faithful lodges in the colonies.
It's important to point out that the uprising of the American Masonic lodges against the English ones predates the American Revolution by many years. Therefore, whether this was planned or not, they became the very first bearers of revolutionary thought. As they grew in number, the vision of independence spread across the whole country. In 1776, the United States declared their independence, and soon after, their constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved.
In 1732, Benjamin Franklin was initiated into the Turn Tavern Lodge in Philadelphia. That same year, James Oglethorpe, founder of the Savannah Colony, which would later become the state of Georgia, created the Solomon Lodge. It was here that the two men destined to become the first Jewish-American Freemasons, Moses and Daniel Nunes, were initiated.
Regardless of their origin, these English and native lodges spread like wildfire throughout the country, fueled by the prestige that came with being a member of them. In 1740, most respectable men in the New England colonies either were or wanted to become Freemasons.
In 1773, a group of outraged Mohawks staged a protest against what they considered unfair English custom duties by dumping overboard the tea cargo of 3 ships. It was the famous Boston Tea Party. Today it is suspected that many of those supposed Mohawks were in fact disguised Freemasons who belonged to the St. Andrew's Lodge of Boston, a lodge that curiously did not convene that night.
The church was particularly infuriated by the fact that many Freemasons supported deism, a Christian philosophy that believes in a personal God and upholds a purely rational interpretation of Scripture, discrediting revelation.
According to deistic principles, the Bible holds many truths and wisdom, but it is not inspired by God. Deists also deny that Jesus is the Son of God and claim that faith is no substitute for observable facts. They do not believe in prophets or miracles. God can only be known through experience and knowledge. For the Church of England, as well as for the Puritans, Deism was clearly a heresy that had to be wiped out.
The persecution of heretic Freemasons was relentless, but nothing could stop them. Soon the British colonies in America would take their first great steps towards liberty, and in their footsteps, the trace of Freemasonry could be clearly seen.
Freemason and revolutionary ideas blended well. Masonic principles chimed with the American culture of the era, steeped as it was in notions of fraternity, liberty, and equality. Pennsylvania was a particularly fertile breeding ground for Freemasonry, since its inhabitants considered it to be the promised land of those who had suffered persecution in Europe. Here, Freemason symbols even appeared on crockery and home furniture.
Although Freemasons were in favour of equality, slavery was still in existence in the United States, and they did not accept black people. So those freed slaves began to found their own lodges. Such was the case of the Prince Hall Lodge.
In 1775, while still under British rule, the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge was created in Boston as a segregated chapter for free blacks, named after an emancipated slave, Prince Hall. During the War of Independence, many of these black Freemasons, including Prince Hall, joined the revolutionary forces and fought with the Continental Army against the British. Today, the Prince Hall fraternity has over 4,500 lodges worldwide, with a membership of over 300,000 Freemasons.
In 1776, the United States of America declared their independence, and soon after, their Constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved. But it didn't end there. Freemasonry's involvement went a lot deeper, and it was at the foundation of the whole governmental system. So one wonders what previous oaths had the Freemason founding fathers taken before placing their right hand on the new Constitution, and how much of what has been built since was done to protect the interest of the Freemasons.
16% of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. A quarter of the signatories of the Articles of Confederation were Freemasons, and a third of the signatories of the Constitution were Freemasons. By the time George Washington took the oath of office as first president of the USA, a third of the governors of the original colonies were Freemasons too. Freemason John A.C. Muhlenberg was the first Speaker of the House of Representatives. Freemasons John J. Blair and William Cushing were justices in the first Supreme Court. Close to 46% of the officers of the Continental Army, or Independence Army, were Freemasons, as were almost half of their 78 generals.
Now, if we heed to the Freemasonry's ideals of liberty and fraternity and focus on its positive contributions, maybe it wouldn't matter if the United States is a Masonic country. However, we are speaking of a secret society that for centuries has practiced strange rituals and taken mysterious oaths, and whose practices have all taken place behind closed doors. So what if the most important democracy in the world really responded to the interests of small groups of people whose actual goals are kept secret from its own citizens? How much of the phrase "all men are equal under the law" remains true when we discover that the architects of this great democracy belong to societies whose members protect each other and won't even let their own women join?
After the Declaration of Independence, American lodges declared their own independence and stopped concealing their existence. They began to open headquarters in public buildings for all to see. This increased their popularity. Masonic halls were often used for social and civil gatherings, since they were usually the best venues in town. In spite of their declared non-political affiliation, Masonic lodges indeed became active in politics, and often operated openly and side by side with the established political parties.
Today we can see numerous traces that confirm the presence of Freemasonry in America. They are in plain view all around us, from the more conspicuous Masonic temples to the lesser-known symbols that are incorporated in its very own currency. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. What is actually below the surface? What is it that these symbols mean, that almost 300 million citizens swear by every day? What is the true ideology of the most powerful country in the world? And how does it affect their actions? And where will it lead them?
In the early 18th century, Freemason became particularly strong and influential in North America, where it played a key role in the creation of what today we know as the United States of America. Many of the USA's founding fathers were Freemasons, among them Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was a printer, scientist, inventor, politician and diplomat. In 1726, upon returning from England, he founded his own secret society, the Leather Apron Club. He was later initiated a Freeman in a Philadelphia lodge and published the first American book on Freemasonry in 1734, the year that he was named Provincial Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. In 1755, Franklin participated in the inauguration of the first Masonic Hall in Philadelphia.
Without a doubt, Franklin was fully committed to the cause. But which cause was that? American? Masonic? Both, perhaps. Another famous American Freemason was George Washington, and a statue of him can still be seen today, posing as a Baphomet, a Masonic icon related to Lucifer. A mere coincidence, or does this have a more significant meaning? So what is the statue trying to tell us? The neoconservatives and ultra-religious groups in the USA today should perhaps ask themselves, what exactly are they celebrating on the 4th of July?
George Washington was initiated in 1752, while still a youth in Fredericksburg, Virginia. The following year, he obtained the rank of Master Freemason. He took the oath of office as first President of the USA in the Federal Hall on Wall Street, using a Bible loaned by the neighboring St. John's No. 1 Lodge. Centuries later, another GW, George W. Bush, swore on the same Bible, though he does not admit to being a Freemason. In May 1791, George Washington announced the creation of the new country's capital city, which would rise on the banks of the Potomac River. A month later, a group of Freemasons gathered in the town of Alexandria for a ceremony in which they laid the foundation stone of a city that would soon be called Washington, D.C., and whose design would be influenced by Masonic symbolism. On September the 18th, 1793, George Washington, wearing the leather apron and ruff for Grand Master, laid the foundation stone of the Capitol, a building that has all the hallmarks of Masonic architecture.
The capital of the United States of America is perhaps the city with the most symbolism in the world. The design of its buildings, statues and monuments are true to the Freemason principles upon which the city was founded.
The first blueprints of the Capitol were drawn up in August 1791 by French engineer Pierre-Charles L'Enfant. L'Enfant worked together with the American civil engineer and astronomer Andrew Ellicott, who charted the land in 1790 under the directions of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. Except for Jefferson, they were all Freemasons. In L'Enfant's blueprints, the three most important buildings, the Capitol, the White House, and Washington's monument, the obelisk, form a right-angled triangle, where the hypotenuse is Pennsylvania Avenue, between the White House and the Capitol. The set square is the Masonic symbol par excellence.
It's worth asking why American symbols do not portray anything American. For example, the obelisk. Although it stands out in an unmistakable way, few question why this Egyptian symbol stands dominantly in the heart of the city rather than something a little more American. The answer is obelisks, like many other Egyptian constructions such as pyramids, are Hermetic symbols and therefore both Masonic and especially Rosicrucian.
True to their origins as builders, Freemasons always gave fundamental importance to architectonic symbols. To this day, there are those who assert that the intersection of Massachusetts Avenue, Rhode Island Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Vermont Avenue, and K Street Northwest form a Pythagorean pentagram or 5-point star, a design scheme which many evangelists and other conservative groups believe to be satanic. We can conclude that Washington, D.C. is, right from its foundational design, a symbolic evocation of Masonic principles.
In the early 19th century, America was swarming with Masonic lodges, and their members were all important people in the community. Now, if the Brotherhood had done so much for the American Revolution, if their principles were so innocent, and they enjoyed widespread influence and social prestige, why did the lodges still remain so secretive? What did they have to hide, once free from the monarchy and the Church of England? Perhaps the many Freemasons that are studied in American history textbooks today could have provided us with the answers.
In 1801, John Marshall, previously Grand Master of Virginia, was named Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In 1804, Lewis and Clark, both Freemasons, left St. Louis to explore the Pacific coast, becoming the first pioneers, and in the process claiming land that belonged to Native Americans in the name of the United States, and presumably Freemasonry. Freemason Stephen Austin established the first Anglo-American colony in the Mexican state of Texas. Andrew Jackson was the first president of the USA to previously have been Grand Master of his own state. He was in office from 1829 to 1837.
However, in this, its most active period, Freemasonry was infiltrated by a sect who had disturbing objectives, the Illuminati of Bavaria, who were, or still are, a mysterious organization who are capable of infiltrating one of the oldest brotherhoods in the world to manipulate it for their own needs.
Freemasonry was undoubtedly the starting point for many of the most progressive ideas of the 18th century. In the American continent, the old European Brotherhood found a fertile soil for its anti-monarchic and anti-clergy ideas to flourish. Freemasonry had a direct and profound influence on the independence movements of Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia, and of course, the United States of America.
Up to this point, we can say that beyond the typical criticism, Freemasonry's role in American history was positive. In 1776, in Germany, the Order of Illuminati of Bavaria was founded. This was an organization created by a megalomaniac that very soon infiltrated almost all the European Freemasonry and perhaps the American lodges too. The Illuminati proposed putting an end to religion and all established government to create a new world order. When they were exposed, people began to panic, and the whole of Freemasonry was subject to suspicion. And from this, it would never fully recover.
In 1776, just a few months before the American Declaration of Independence, the Order of the Illuminati was founded in Bavaria, in what is today part of Germany. Their founder and driving force was Adam Weishaupt, an eccentric idealist and a true megalomaniac, who, inspired by the ideas of Rousseau, went in a quest to satisfy his own vaulting ambitions. Just like the great philosopher, Weishaupt upheld that man should embrace his pure, natural state and govern himself. But unlike Rousseau, Weishaupt advocated the dissolution of the state, the abolition of private property, and the banning of all religions. He wants to recast all existing societies and cultures into a single secular order, one that he himself would rule. Adam Weishaupt intended to be a true world dictator. The order of the Illuminati spread throughout Europe and grew strong among Freemasons and the nobility, until they were eventually discovered and their ambitions thwarted, or so it was believed at the time. However, it is suspected that years later, the French Revolution and its subsequent phase of terror were carefully staged and managed by the Illuminati. In 1798, their presence was reported in America, causing the infamous New England Illuminati panic.
If, since 1776, the Illuminati had infiltrated Freemasonry, one could ask how many of the founding fathers were Illuminati as well as being Freemasons. This possibility was perfect ammunition for the enemies of Freemasonry.
With the Declaration of Independence, the United States established freedom of worship. The religious and conservative sectors were furious, and an anti-Masonic campaign was soon up and running. The New England Illuminati panic could have been a manufactured propaganda campaign designed to nullify the actions of the founding fathers, or it could have been genuine. The fact remains that John Adams, the second President of the United States, designated May the 9th as a day of fasting and worship to implore the heavens' mercy and blessing for the imperiled nation.
After this statement from Adams, the paranoia of the Illuminati became hysteria. The prestigious Reverend Jedediah Morse of Boston devoted 3 months of sermons to condemn what he called a conspiracy to attack the true religion and liberty. He held the Illuminati responsible of attempting to destroy the system, unleash chaos, and take control of the world.
Morse based his theories on those of Scottish Freemason John Robison, who maintained that the Illuminati, who attacked thrones and altars, had already established themselves in the United States. Morse's sermons, along with the wide circulation of Robison's books and those of Abbot Augustin Barruel, stoked the hysteria and provoked sensationalist newspaper stories. In the end, no hard evidence of an Illuminati conspiracy could ever be found.
However, there is one curious fact. Thomas Jefferson himself, one of the founding fathers of the new nation, defended the Illuminati in writing. From that moment on, he would be accused himself of being one of the infiltrators in America.
After reading one of the books by Barruel, Jefferson wrote a letter to Bishop Madison, saying that Adam Weishaupt believes in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks that he may in time be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance so as to injure none, to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and of course, to render political government useless. This, you know, is not far removed from our own ideals.
Was Thomas Jefferson an Illuminati? His enemies immediately used this letter against him.
The Federalist Party hit back and accused the Democratic Republican Party, headed by Jefferson and Madison, of being puppets controlled by the Democrat parties that have dominated the US political system since the Civil War.
The design of the Great Seal of the USA itself is covered with Masonic symbols. Some even dare say Illuminati symbols. and this seal is printed, of all places, on the dollar bill, the very currency that rules the world.
The Great Seal of the US was created in 1782, and due to its Masonic symbolism, it has been accused of being both Illuminati and Satanist by various conservative and religious groups. One side shows the American bald eagle. The original design had a phoenix, another Masonic symbol. Above the eagle can be seen 13 stars inside a circular design, representing a new constellation. The stars are five-pointed, or pentagrams, a Masonic and Hermetic symbol. It is often linked to satanic worship. The layout of the pentagrams forms a hexagram, or Star of David, another Kabbalistic and Hermetic symbol. On the right claw, 13 arrows. On the left, an olive branch with 13 leaves. Across the breast of the eagle, a shield with 13 stripes. Why 13? Maybe because this was the number of the original American colonies. Or maybe because this is the number of Illuminati degrees. But the most curious details on the reverse side of the seal, where there is a truncated pyramid with 13 steps. The capstone bears the symbol of the great architect of the universe, the all-seeing eye. Underneath the pyramid reads Novus Ordo Seclorum, or New Secular Order, strikingly similar to the Illuminati's manifesto for a new world order. It is also possible to draw a pentagram whose vertices rest on letters M, A, S, O, N, and the all-seeing eye. These letters spell both Mason as well as AONSM, that could stand for Ancient Order, Noble Mystic Shrine, an order appendant to Freemasonry. The pyramid itself is a typical Masonic symbol. The year 1776, in Roman numerals, corresponds to that of the Declaration of Independence, but also to the year in which the Order of the Illuminati was founded. E pluribus uno means from all one, a phrase that has been associated with the Illuminati plans of world domination under a single government.
What part of this is mere chance? How much just fantasy? And what is actually true? Who can say? Though we cannot forget that most of these accusations came from the ultra-conservative sectors, similar to those that still prevail in the United States today. People who are oversensitive, phobic and paranoid, and fans of the traditional sport of witch hunting. The panic generated by Morse's sermons finally dissipated, but less than 3 decades later, a massive anti-Masonic paranoia was unleashed, and this time its members would be pursued relentlessly.
In September 1826, in the small town of Batavia, in New York State, a man named William Morgan disappeared. He was a former Freemason and a swindler who had threatened to write a book revealing the secrets of the secret society. Up until then, many anti-Masonic books had been published, but all of them had been written by outsiders. Morgan's book promised to be the first one written by an insider, and one which would reveal some of their deepest secrets. The Freemasons of Batavia first tried to burn down the print, and then managed to have Morgan accused of petty crimes. Finally, they abducted him and carried him to Fort Niagara on Lake Ontario, ordering him to cross the border into Canada. They said they gave him $500, a horse, and told him to head north and never come back. Morgan was never seen again.
Without doubt, the Freemasons' reaction was horrific, but those were wild times, and America was a wild country. Many suspected that the only journey that Morgan made was to the bottom of the lake. The fact remains that nobody saw him alive again, and the episode ended in a suspicious trial that unleashed the wrath of the population, and a witch hunt followed.
26 Freemasons were accused.
In the long run, the book was finally published by a daring associate of Morgan's. The paranoid and scandalous tone of the book made it an immediate bestseller. The average American already loved to imagine conspiracies and speculate about invisible enemies. Suddenly, the honourable and prestigious society became a sinister sect in the public eye.
On St. John's Day, 3,000 people went to the headquarters of the Batavia Lodge, attacked the Freemasons, and looted the premises. In every town and village, lists were published denouncing the local Freemasons. In the years that followed, anti-Masonic sentiment spread all over the United States. In the 1832 presidential election, the anti-Masonic party came in third, with 8% of the votes going to its candidate, William Wirt, a former Freemason.
Freemasonry stood accused of being anti-democratic, anti-American, and anti-Christian. A cloud of suspicion was cast over all the country regarding Freemason congressmen, judges, and public servants. It would not be the last time that a ghost enemy would be created in times of elections.
Between 1827 and 1837, Freemasons dropped in numbers, from 100,000 to 40,000. Of the 500 active lodges in New York, only 75 remain. Many went underground and abandoned their annual banquets and parades.
But Freemasonry had thick roots that ran deep. In just a few years, thanks to a certain Albert Pike, it made an amazing comeback. And since that new resurgence, its members would once again reach the highest positions in American society.
Albert Pike was a brilliant intellectual. In 1850, he was initiated into the Western Star Lodge, number 2 of Little Rock, Arkansas, and went on to accumulate more than 130 Masonic degrees. It has been said that Pike was an Illuminati, and also one of the founders of the Ku Klux Klan. There is little evidence to support either of these claims. It is also said that together with Giuseppe Mazzini, a great Italian Freemason leader, he had planned 3 world wars, at the end of which the Illuminati would take over world power. This assertion is also unproven, but quite popular in websites and books.
Pike brought about a Masonic resurgence through many union-like fraternities and other forms of Masonic social organizations, such as mutual benefit funds. These became prosperous business ventures, quite popular with the American middle class, and made Freemasonry popular once again.
In 1885, the Statue of Liberty was presented to the United States by France to celebrate the former's centennial in 1886. There are those who say that it was really a gift from the Freemasons of the Great Orient of France for the centennial of the First Masonic Republic. The two explanations are not mutually exclusive. The statue holds aloft the torch of illumination, or the flaming torch of reason that symbolizes the sun. Its official name is Liberty, Enlightening the World. It was designed by a Freemason sculptor named Frederic Auguste Bartholdi. The French engineer who built it was also a Freemason, Gustave Eiffel, who also built the tower that bears his name in Paris. The foundation stone was laid in a Masonic ceremony organized by the New York lodges in 1884. The Statue of Liberty is a perfect example of how Freemasonry can conceal its messages in clear sight of all. For more than a century, hundreds of thousands of immigrants from all over the world and hundreds of millions of tourists have greeted and admired, without knowing it, a Masonic symbol of illumination.
At the beginning of the 20th century, Freemasonry was once again a powerful force in the United States. The days of persecution were long gone. Many of the key government jobs were back in their hands. Among them, the Oval Office in the White House.
Theodore Roosevelt President from 1901 to 1909, was master of the Lodge Mating Cock, number 806 of Oyster Bay, New York. William Howard Taft, President between 1909 and 1913, was Grand Master of Ohio Freemasonry. Warren G. Harding, President from 1921 to 1923, was a Degree 33 Mason in Ohio Fraternity, number 26.
With the Great Depression of the 30s, the Brotherhood lost almost 600,000 members. However, Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Freemason himself, brought the country back from the brink of disaster. The Freemasons' prestige kept growing.
The growth of Freemasonry lasted until well into the early 1960s. From its ranks emerged presidents and senators, including Harry S. Truman, president from 1945 till 1953. He had attained the rank of Grand Master of Missouri Freemasonry, the highest degree in the organization. The last president to be an acknowledged Freemason was Lyndon B. Johnson, who was initiated as a Mason in Texas, and whose time in office lasted from 1963 to 1969. Johnson stepped up into office following the murder of the first ever Catholic president of the USA, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
And then suddenly, Freemasonry lost its popularity. No longer was it a subject of conversation, except for books on conspiracies and dubious websites. Had Freemasonry gone out of fashion, or was it just taking a break after a job well done?
It's hard to believe that a secret society, which has influenced the creation and development of the most powerful state on earth, whose presence is felt in all of that state's national symbols, has been reduced to a mere social circuit, where citizens in exotic clothes practice secret rituals that alternate with bingo events and themed balls. Today, fundamentalist groups, such as televangelists, ultra-conservative Christians, and elected but totalitarian leaders seem to flourish as they once did in the Middle Ages. It stands to reason that their historic archenemy, Freemasonry, would not yield ground that easily.
Was or is Freemasonry a state within a state, a shadow government? And do they dominate the world by dominating its most powerful nation? The United States is a country with the most accessible public information on earth. However, it was built brick by brick, law by law, following the secret principles of a hermetic society that doesn't even open its rituals to the public. A large percentage of the country's leading men were or are Freemasons. In the land of opportunity where all are supposedly equal under the law, how does belonging to this special brotherhood help you in any way? How many American symbols really represent something different to what citizens believe? The vast majority of American citizens hold a job, pay their mortgage, watch the news at 8, and most of them even vote when they are required to. They live under the illusion that they control their own destiny and the destiny of their families. Meanwhile, the all-seeing eye watches attentively from the very currency that they all work so hard to attain.